From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast Dives. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Dives, how are you doing today?
Doing well, man. We are inches away from the college football playoff. Some fun teams like Arizona State are sneaking into this thing, and we're going to talk about some of those guys tonight. So guys you don't really know about. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. I am also joined by his co-host on Party on Broad, Ryan. Give him a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how are you doing?
Good. I'm ready to talk a little college football playoffs, and obviously we have conference championship games that honestly I think a lot of them were a little surprising at the matchups. So yeah, it'll be an interesting weekend for sure.
All right. Well, we will dive into our game of the week here in a few minutes, but before we do, we're each going to give you a prospect profile, a guy that we think the Eagles could maybe be interested in as you're watching games this weekend. It's somebody that you can keep an eye on. And I'll lead us off here. I'm going to go with wide receiver Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Iowa State plays Arizona State at noon, which is probably the game you're going to watch unless you're into Ohio versus Miami of Ohio for some reason. And no judgment if you are. Otherwise, you're probably watching Iowa State, Arizona State. And Jaden Higgins is a fun guy to watch. He was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school. He committed to Eastern Kentucky, where he played 2 seasons before he transferred to Iowa State. And he's a big body guy, 6'4", 215 pounds. He had 53 receptions for 983 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. He also set the Iowa State school record with 214 receiving yards in their bowl game. This season, he's got 80 receptions for 1,068 yards and 9 touchdowns. So better year this year. He's continued to build on that. And he has a naturally large catch radius that it's also extended by his ability to make catches outside his frame. And so he can sort of be a bit of a quarterback's best friend when it comes to making catches, making difficult catches, tight window throws, those sorts of things. But that's not his only game. He's a good route runner too. A lot of times these bigger contested catch guys, it's because they can't separate. I think he runs routes with quite a bit of nuance, especially on like the intermediate end breakers. So he is quicker than fast. He doesn't have like that top home run speed, but he does have quick twitch in short areas that he can use to generate separation. And he's got some alignment versatility. He's played about 30% of his snaps in the slot this season. Now, I did mention the speed. He does have low end top speed. So it is a little difficult for him to threaten guys vertically. And he struggles to get off of press coverage at times, which is not ideal for like your big body X type receiver. He doesn't play to his size in the run game. He's a willing blocker, but he just doesn't generate power or displacement. He struggles to sustain blocks. And so those are obviously some things he needs to work on. I don't know how much you could work on your speed, but he definitely needs to work on his hand fighting, his releases at the line of scrimmage, and his ability to block in the run game. But if he can pick those things up, he can be a good rotational receiver early in his career at the next level. I think this is a guy that's probably going to go on day 3. And, if the Eagles want another bigger bodied receiver, an AJ Brown a piece to develop behind him. Of course, you have Johnny Wilson as well, but Jaden Higgins could be an interesting guy to take a look at. So keep an eye on him when you tune in at noon on Saturday. Dives, I'll throw it to you next. Who is your Eagles prospect that you're keeping an eye on?
Same game. And that's a good one. Jaden Higgins, not in my top 10, but probably right outside of it. Definitely a guy I'm going to be watching because I haven't really gotten a lot of opportunity to watch Iowa State this season. But going to the other side, I'm going to talk a running back, and he is Cam Skattebo, who enters this Big 12 championship game with over 1,200 yards rushing, 14 rushing touchdowns, also caught 34 passes for nearly 500 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is a dude that ranks number 2 in the nation in all-purpose yards, but he was not named one of the 3 finalists for the year's best running back award. Those finalists went to Omarion Hampton out of UNC, Ashton Genty, of course, out of Boise State, and my man Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. But Cam Scadaboo, 5'9", 215-pound battering ram, has caused 225 missed tackles during his college career with Arizona State. Obviously not the biggest guy, but plays with a lot of power. He looks like a short yardage back despite that smallish frame. He's been stopped for no gain or loss on just 10% of his career carries, which ranks among the top 5 running backs in the FBS. Excels through contact, but he also brings an entire dimension to the passing game. This guy is not just a dump-off threat. He's a legit receiver out of the backfield. Arizona uses him in a ton of different ways in the slot, all over the place, not just check downs, screens, you name it. So kind of a fun prospect that could be a north to south guy, but also give you some of that like third down passing option. He's never going to be that bell cow like a Saquon Barkley, but I do think he is a modern NFL running back. Negative wise, he doesn't have elite like breakaway speed, but a guy that can do a lot of things as a running back by committee kind of dude. So if you haven't heard of Cam Scadaboo, you have now. He's going to be a fun one to watch in this conference championship game as Arizona State looks to make some serious noise and get into the college football playoff.
All right. So we've got 2 guys here from the early game. Brian, did you go to the early game as well?
No, I don't have a guy in a game, unfortunately. You know,
how are they going to watch him this weekend?
I know.
He's a good one, though. He's really good.
He is a good one, and it's tight end Mason Taylor. Obviously, we've covered many tight ends for this show, and rightfully so. It's a position of great need, I think, for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Mason Taylor is essentially he's NFL royalty. His dad is Jason Taylor. His uncle is Zach Thomas, both Pro Bowl Hall of Famers. And he's been starting since a freshman at LSU. Is, I believe, second all time in tight end with his freshman season, actually, with 38 receptions and 414 yards. This year, a little bit more, 55 catches, 546 yards for only 2 touchdowns, unfortunately, but has been a very solid option for that LSU team and that offense. And they went through 3 early losses this year: Florida, Alabama, Texas A&M, all in a row, and everyone kind of thought the LSU season was lost. But they kind of went on a nice winning streak there, and a lot of that was due to the consistency of Mason Taylor on the offensive side. He's got incredibly nice hands. Just seems to have just a natural ability to catch the football. So if you're, kind of throw it anywhere near him, he seems to come down with the football. Obviously is super intelligent out there. His whole life he's been, taught how to play NFL football from his father and his uncle. So you can tell the intelligence is there in his moves. But he's also very versatile, seems to be able to line up kind of anywhere and able to make a coordinator, utilize him almost like a chess piece and just kind of can flex him and move him wherever, depending on the matchup. He is very reliable in the red zone. That's so surprised he doesn't actually have more touchdowns than he does. Because he comes down with 50-50 balls. He's able to kind of box out well, and he's able to kind of go that corner route if need be in the red zone. But He actually can be a yak possibility. It's not, certainly not his strength, but his yak ability is certainly there and consistent and balanced. So I will say, though, some of the weaknesses, he doesn't seem to have a good vertical speed on him. He's got good, quickness, good speed, but not when it comes to deep vertical routes. Doesn't seem to be able to get that separation, and those separation skills certainly need some help. I will say blocking is a little above average, but certainly for a tight end, it definitely needs to be improved, and he needs to be able to kind of set the edge there on the blocking side. But other than that, it's kind of really about production, especially in the red zone. Like I said, he has all the tools and certainly can be a great red zone threat, and it is utilized quite a bit, but just doesn't seem to get into the end zone. It seems like he just falls short quite a bit. But Mason Taylor definitely has the skills. I think he, certainly, right now more of a early day 3 guy, but I could easily see him kind of moving up depending on, the combine, because he certainly is athletic and certainly can show those pass catching skills. So.
All right. So there you have it. Ryan's prospect profile. You guys be sure you flip through the channels looking for him this weekend. Make sure you catch him.
All right.
All right. Well, let's roll on to our game of the week breakdown. There's obviously conference championship game weekend. There's several good matchups. You got Georgia, Texas rematch. But we decided to go to Penn State versus Oregon. This game is the night game on CBS. It's in Indianapolis. That's kind of hard to say. Oregon opened as a 3-point favorite. That line has since moved to 3.5. And Oregon dodges Ohio State, who they narrowly beat in the regular season after they're unable to beat Michigan on their home field, and then decide to start a fight to defend their home field after the game, since they didn't do it during the game. But watching this game was a fun experience because I have relatives from Michigan and Ohio, and they were all in Oklahoma. And so we were hanging out at my grandma's house over Thanksgiving weekend, watching this game together on her little 32-inch TV. It was a lot of fun. But this will be the first time that someone that isn't Ohio State or Michigan wins the Big Ten since 2016. And it'll actually be the first matchup between these two teams in 19 years, a game that Oregon won 38-20. Dibes, as you watch this game, what are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, obviously, you start with James Franklin versus himself, off the field. I don't understand how he's not on the hot seat. Just one victory against a top 5 opponent. That's the thing that's been holding this team back. And they did have that loss to Ohio State. But since then, the Nittany Lions, man, they have been surging. 4 straight wins, 3 by double digits. Defensively, this Nittany Lions team shines, man. Abdul Carter's dominance off the edge has been ridiculous as of late. I'll get to that in a second. This Penn State secondary has 12 interceptions. They have a +7 turnover differential. And then you look at Oregon, a team that's up to every task, man. They are led by Dylan Gabriel, who has directed the Ducks offense for 3,200 plus yards passing, 24 touchdowns. And that leads us to his biggest threat. And it's got to be Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Abdul Carter, who is in his first season as a defensive end. He moved from linebacker last offseason, and it took some time, but this dude has been unstoppable. He's now got 10 sacks, the 8th most nationally, 19.5 tackles for loss, the 3rd most nationally. Over the last 5 games, you could make a case that this guy is the best defensive player in the country, 10 tackles for loss and 6 sacks in that span. If Oregon wants to remain number 1 in the college football playoff, it starts and ends with slowing down Abdul Carter. who I think has blue chip draft prospect written all over him. There's a lot of other wrinkles I can talk about, but starting there, it's Abdul Carter versus Dylan Gabriel.
All right. Ryan, what are you going to keep an eye on in this game, and how do you kind of expect this one to play out?
Yeah, this Penn State team certainly seems to be, at least offensively, the tale of two teams almost, and it really seems to be whether or not they decide to go through their best offensive weapon in Tyler Warren. This guy is an absolute stud. I'm gushing about him obviously because I love tight ends. I did profile on Tyler Warren earlier in the year. This guy has 978 yards on 81 catches, 6 touchdowns. He's just so reliable, but also so important to that offense. And it seems like when they go away from him, that the offense seems to struggle. And when he's featured, that's when the offense shines. I mean, he also has 21 carries for 189 yards as well, and has a couple of touchdowns as well on the ground. But like I said, it's really whether or not Tyler Warren's going to be 100% featured, because if he is, I feel like Penn State actually might have a shot of making this a game, because offensively, when they are flowing through Warren, they're hard to beat. They're hard to stop. And I know the Ducks certainly have a very potent defense, but if Penn State wants to have any chance in this game, it's got to be Tyler Warren, and it's got to be him all day, every day. And that's the only way that they're going to compete with the offensive firepower that Oregon can provide.
Yeah, this is Andy Kotelnicki's time to shine as well. They brought him in for a reason, to be a creative play caller. He's their offensive coordinator. 2 years ago, this Penn State offense was sluggish. It was slow. It was very boring and predictable. This year, there's been flashes when this Penn State offense gets really fun, and it's got to funnel through this guy, Nick Singleton, one of the top running backs in the country. He's a do-it-all back, 3-down potential in the NFL. And I feel like when they are focused on, running the football, funneling through Tyler Warren to set up the pass, that's when Penn State football is at their best. And we could talk about Drew Aller, who I think is a first-round quarterback. A big fan of his. I don't think we talk about him enough. The talent, the arm strength, everything's all there. But he's going up against a couple of really good defensive linemen for Oregon, and that is Derek Harmon, 6'5", 310, guy that can play inside and out. Definite has Eagles potential. Come next draft process, keep an eye on him, as well as Jordan Birch. These guys get after the quarterback. Oregon has an underrated defensive line, but they're not that great stopping the run. So I feel like if Penn State can cement their will with the run game from the jump, I think it's going to be a really close game. Right now, I think I'm going to go Oregon by 3. I'll say Oregon wins 27, Penn State 24. That can swing so many different directions.
Yeah, the run game will be interesting because when you look at Penn State's passing game, Drew Aller completes almost 72% of his passes this season, which is the 5th highest rank in the Power 5. Oregon allows only a 55.5% completion percentage. So that's not the sort of game that you probably want to get into. Whether they're able to establish that run will be interesting to watch. Ryan, do you have a pick that you want to make in this one?
Yeah, listen, I do ultimately believe that Oregon is going to come out on top. They are the nation's only undefeated team. And obviously Penn State was, a tough game with Ohio State there from being right there as well. But, they unfortunately, I feel like Oregon ran through some really nice teams. So I feel like they're tested. I feel like they are set up to make a run in this new 12-team playoff. And I think, I think they do win a closer one, but I still think it's going to be one score. I think it's going to be 24-17, Oregon.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. Thoughts on Eagles players you can watch, thoughts on the Penn State-Oregon matchup, and obviously there's a lot of other good games going on this weekend as too. Enjoy them because then we're off into bowl season, and I think it's a few weeks. There's a couple weeks break before even the early bowl games. I always forget. I always feel like it's like a week and a half, but it's never is. It's always like closer to Christmas. So it's the last college football for a little while.
December 14th, I think, is the start of bowl season because theoretically week 16 is the Army-Navy game.
Okay.
And then, this week upcoming is week 15. So there's, I guess, technically 2 weeks until bowl games start.
Army-Navy might be a fun game this year.
Yeah, it could be.
All right. Well, do either of you guys have any final thoughts that you want to throw out to the people before we get out of here?
Not really. I'm just ready to get through this week and get to these college football playoffs. Like I'm excited to get to like the prop bets and the picks and the fantasy football type of stuff with this college football playoff. Like I just can't wait, man. It's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, Selection Sunday is going to be fun. I'm going to be glued to that to see exactly not only who makes it in, because again I think for the most part the matchups seem to be okay. Well, we know who's going to be in at least the first 8 or 9, maybe for sure. But the last couple is where it's going to be a little interesting for sure to see who gets snubbed and who doesn't, and then the matchups, because there's going to be some amazing matchups. Cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to follow along with, and you guys should follow along with us as we follow along with it. We'll get you prepared every step of the way for the bowl games and for the college football playoff, and ultimately for the NFL draft. So be sure you're tuned in to all of that coverage and all the other coverage here on the Eagles Pinpool Network. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the Armchair Scouts. Hit that subscribe button, share with a friend. If you missed your chance to share it with all your family at Thanksgiving, you need a reason to catch up with people between now and Christmas. So just shoot them a text message, say, hey, this guy Ryan's got a really cool podcast set up. You should be downloading, listening, watching, all the good stuff. We'd certainly appreciate it. You can check us out on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. And we'll catch you guys next week for another episode of the Armchair Scouts.